and friendly hellos. Welcome to the first governance call of July 11th. Let's take a look at a very high level of what we have on the agenda for this week. We're going to start out with notary issues. On the top of mind, it's communications. What standards should go into Slack and GitHub? How do we talk with each other? How do we flag resolutions and discussions in a clear and effective way? Then we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the activity review that's been taking place. So all of you notaries, we've gone through, measured your participation, talking about those numbers, and then move on to next on what does it look like for the inactive removal process? What are we going to be looking at that? How are we communicating this with notaries? And then kind of establishing that goal. For working group updates this week, we have RG who's joined the line. We have about 4 issues that he's going to cover, everything from minors to pathways. So a lot of information is going to be coming from the Trust and Transparency Working Group on this call. And lastly, will be all of the new proposals that have come in. It's quite a bit. So we'll talk about what are those proposals currently flagged. Make sure that you have a chance to review, see, and provide input and have a lengthy discussion. And we anticipate time at the end of the call for anything that might not be discussed already that you'd like to see on the agenda. So as always, a friendly reminder, we have these calls every 2 weeks. We stopped last week due to a holiday in the States, but we've resumed the normal every other week tempo. Today is July 11th. The next call will be taking place on July 25th. You could follow along with this calendar if you'd like to add this and see what takes place. If you'd like to see anything specifically brought on this agenda and have discussed, we make an issue in GitHub every 2 weeks. Feel free to add a comment, add a proposal, and just link it. And I'll make sure that it's in the deck and make sure that we have talking points. Or if there was anything that you would specifically like to flag, feel free to say that. And I'll make sure that I dedicate time on this call, our call, for anything that's top of mind. If you need anything at all, there's a team on the governance that's here to help you. We all have a very specific facet that we work in. That way you're getting the best support as you go forward. If you're not sure who to reach out to, or you haven't gotten a ping back, you can always send me a friendly message and I'll be happy to route you to the best place to get you the fastest support as you go forward. So with that, notaries on the call, thank you for being here. Let's take a quick look at what's going on. So the question came up in chat was, hey, what's going on with the election? So a quick update for everybody as we go through. Right now, we are currently delaying and postponing the V5 elections. The reason for this is we're working on improving the current resources for the current V4 notaries. So in the last election, we went up from around 45 notaries up to 86 that were on-chained on the multi-sig. And what we've been seeing is that participation is still remaining around the same levels that we had in V3. So even though we have more V4 notaries, we're not seeing a great increase in the number of participation. So it really kind of begs the mindset, does an election with more and more notaries translate to faster and faster application reviews? And the answer that we got from V3 to V4 was no. So what we're doing is we're looking at how we can best support the V4 notaries that we currently have, as well as like improved onboarding, making sure that they have the tools available, that they're well aware of how to review, find, sign applications, and that they're tracking all of the requirements related to fraud, trust, waste, and abuse. So the current V4 notary pool is quite substantial where we're not at a deficit. And what we're going to be looking at is when we get ready for this V5 notary, how are we approaching this in an effective way? Because what we found is just by scaling the amount of notaries doesn't scale the effective of the program. In actuality, it actually slows things down because rather than having a core group of notaries that we have a very clear communication, what we found with a lot of the newer notaries that were onboarded and that are inactive is that they require substantially more time, more changes, more updates, more follow-ups, and that really detracts from the program. So to circle back on this, we'll probably be providing dates on V5 probably in the coming weeks or months as we really work to solidify this. But just to answer the question that was posted in chat, or if you've seen some of these current chats that we've had on this call, we are postponing this election for these reasons. If you have questions on this, why don't you hold them? Love to put that in a discussion, and we have plenty of time at the end of the call to come back, hear your thoughts, and anything you might want to raise for us as we look at this. Another just check in from the notary standpoint is just a review of how communication should work. Obviously, as we're communicating across different cultures, different roles within the ecosystem, we need to be very mindful that we are approaching this from like a business standpoint. So all of our communication should adhere to that standard. What that means is obviously like avoid the name calling, avoid discussions that would be considered hateful or be considered harassment. And really, what we're looking in this is it's okay to have a dissenting opinion. It's okay to want to flag something as we go forward. But if we kind of get into this back and forth where it's really tricky to ascertain, is this a conversation that's taking place? Or is this someone who's just trying to harass and poke the bear? We are going to moderate this. So for the first time 2 weeks ago, we removed a comment. Right now, I haven't seen anything that's removable worthy, but we wanted to make sure that we're just readdressing that we are holding you to standards, notaries, storage providers, miners, whoever it may be that's on the call, that we're communicating in a way where everyone feels like their voice is heard and they feel safe vocalizing that voice. If we get reports of things to the contrary, they will be dealt with severely and swiftly. And so just to reiterate, the operational guidelines are listed in GitHub. There should be no communication on abusive content as we go forward on those calls. And notaries who are on the call, SLA, thanks for being here. I really appreciate you being on the call. I just posted into chat the link to the Airtable. We are pulling this every 2 weeks. We gave in Q1 of 2023 and Q2 of 2023 a lot of leeway. So if you were a notary and you came to one of these calls but didn't sign on, last time I was like, that's okay. I just manually added you and I took your word for it. Going forward in the second part of 2023, if you are on this call and you don't sign this participation roster, we'll have no way to verify. And since we've made this standard and this expectation very clear, you please sign this form to get credit. If you are a storage provider, a community member, someone else in the ecosystem, filling this out is a great way to kind of mark your attendance here. We don't pull this for any metrics for you, but if you want to get involved later, either as a notary or someone who's showing that you're involved in the program, this is a really effective way to do so. So if you check chat, you'll see the link to the Airtable. When you fill that out, we'll get all the information that you feel comfortable sharing. Notaries, I also look at this based off how you allocate time. So if you're allocating time for self-reported contributions, it's really helpful for me to see, like, were you reviewing applications? Were you bogged down into something else? So thank you for taking the time to fill that out. It goes a long way. All right, so a check-in on what we're looking at with the notary participation. We kicked this off in June, and really the goal was we have 86 notaries, and I think it was around 56 of those were SLA 4s and 5s, which means we should have around 65 really active notaries that are reviewing applications, signing, coming to calls, filing proposals, commenting on proposals, and we really just weren't seeing that level of activity. So it started with like, let's check it out and see what's going on. So for the month of June, we culminated a lot of metrics: who's coming to calls, who's on proposals, who's reviewing data, who's in Slack. And we put together a list of like, hey, these are the notaries that are active, inactive, that are responsive, and here's where we're pulling that. And I proposed a discussion. It was issue 990. You'll see the link there. And essentially what we're looking at next is there's another proposal for how do we address the inactivity? Should they be pipped? Should they be removed outright? So we're going to kind of
然后第五届那个
RG,
现
can you
在
help me?
现在那个什么，之前不是说6、7月份要第五次那个啥嘛，那个 Notary 的那个。
There we go. Gendon, I don't know if that was a question for me or if you just had an unmuted mic, but if you stick a hand up, I'll know for the future and I'll be happy to give you the floor. Otherwise, I muted you there as we go forward. So let's take a look at what that looks like. For the notaries that we have active, these were the SLA standards that we put forward. And a lot of these standards tie back to, are you able to sign applications effectively and quickly? So I think we have around 400 open LDNs applications. So ideally, if we have, 50, 60 notaries that are all signing every week, 2 weeks, monthly, that number should rapidly diminish because of the diligence being done, but we're not seeing that. So in the issue that I put together, you can see the link here at the bottom. What I did was I didn't rank them. They're not like tagged in any way. I just wanted to make it very transparent for all of the notaries to see what other notaries are doing. So you can see exactly what a different notary is, what their SLA level that they were accepted to in their applications, as well as how many applications they've signed, as well as how many notary governance calls they've come to. And what this does is now I can use this list to come back and follow up with those inactive notaries that have no signing activity or very limited signing activity that might have come to governance calls but aren't active, and see where the block is. Again, the goal of this project isn't to just blankly remove individuals. It's to find out what might be stopping them from performing a notary diligence role and help correct that problem to get them all set up. So that's really the goal, and that's the next steps that's being followed. And there's a proposal open to take a look at like how that removal issues. So this proposal 911 was filed by the community. It was essentially saying, look, if we have inactive notaries, how does the process work for removing them? And so when I'm talking about inactive, it's clear that we should establish what those three things are. The three parts of inactivity that we're seeing is one, not attending a governance call. Now, not all of these calls are required. That's why the metrics on this isn't 100%, but keeping up with some of the issues that we discuss. On this call, we flag some of the highest priorities that come up from GitHub, from Slack, from everything. And so this is a good way to see it. The second is not reviewing applications. So one of the new tooling that you can go in the registry is say why you do not want to sign an application. So if you are not signing, the expectation is that a notary should be reviewing these applications. That way they're moving forward and they have tags on what might need to be done so the requester can do those things or have them removed or have them move forward. So reviewing applications is a very key metric for an active notary. And the third is not signing. So we have some notaries that might not have signed. I've been reached out to, hey, I've got a problem with my ledger, or I've since moved on. These are very rectifiable projects, and problems. And the goal is that we solve these quickly and effectively for you. So I'm going to open this up, and I'm really looking for discussion on this one, because one of the questions outstanding is, what is an appropriate timeline expectations for notaries to go in and sign applications? Should a notary be signing every day, every hour? Probably not realistically. Should a notary be signing every week, every other week, once a month? That feels like more of an inline, and that's where I'm looking for feedback. So feel free to put in chat or feel free to raise a hand if you have thoughts. But what we're looking for is when we're establishing these standards of how a notary should be signing, I realize that there might be bursts of signing and then a while and then bursts of signing. So what should be the delay if a notary is not signing? Should it be 2 weeks, a month, 3 months? Any feedback, greatly appreciated. I'll mute the line if you have thoughts, or feel free to put it in chat. So reading out a comment that RG just put, and it's a good one to flag, is this isn't just signing an application, allocating the data, but coming into the registry and performing the diligence. So as RG was stating there in chat, the performance of diligence is what we're looking for. What is a timeline? If we don't get it on this call, I'm going to come back to issue 911. I'll link this in the Notaries channel too to make sure that it's high on the radar, because we're going to be pulling from this as we start to like write new governance docs. And again, what I'm looking for is, should diligence be required to be done every 2 weeks, once a month? What is a realistic timeline? Because you all have obligations outside of notary responsibility that's not unreasonable. I would hate to set a standard that was so tight that it was difficult to be met. So looking for your feedback on this one as we go forward. And again, if you are a notary on this call, we flagged this on the last one, a great place to go is checking that Fil Plus application review. I see applications come through there every couple of days. When people DM me asking for status, I recommend that they go post there. So the applications that are in this Fil Plus application review might be coming from those that are highly motivated and looking for that. And if you're looking for a great place to like start and get onto it, that is a great resource to read in Slack. And then as a quick refresher, I know we showed this slide, but just making sure that we're really driving this home is that when that diligence takes place inside of the registry, once you might have done diligence and you've done your questions and the notary gave you the application gave you an answer, you can mark in the registry on why or why not you are signing that. And this is that participation that we're looking to measure. How often should this be done? And then how can we actually hold this standard? So if we're not seeing the notaries that are doing this step, taking them out of the program so they can't sign, but they can still participate, then they can reapply when their bandwidth opens up. So again, please in the registry, list out the DD, and then that way it moves the applications forward and gives you a chance to go down on that. I'm going to pause here before I hand it over to working group. Some of you may notice on this call that we have an English closed caption that's running. This is still testing. It's a proof of concept. And we're still looking at a third-party vendor that can then take this translation live and translate it to a different language. So for those of you on the call that might be looking for Mandarin or simplified Chinese, we're still testing that and working on it. And we should hope to have that set up in the next call or two for you. So that way the words that are coming out here can be directly translated on the screen. And we're working on that for you. So thanks. I see some of you trying to change it. I apologize. We can't at this time. It'll only close caption the language being spoken. So we should see that. And if you don't see that on the screen, inside of Zoom, you'll see a more settings and you'll see captions under that. So that will display the captions as we go. But again, right now it's only set for English. So even if you change that spoken language to Chinese simplified, all it's doing is it's taking the English here. We should have an update for that in the coming sessions to actually have Chinese simplified as we go on. So thank you for that. RG and KZ, thank you so much for joining the call. I think this next session works very well handing it back to you. So RG, I'll hand the floor over to you.
Thanks so much, Kerry, for that. So I think the first thing that we want to share, if you go to quality.datacapstats.io, I'll drop the link here. We have the first version of the quality graph, of the retrievability graph up. I just want to share that this is a work in progress, but everyone within PL as well as externally is very aware of this metric. And I also want to clarify that everyone who's been saying that Fil Plus does not have the ability to enforce retrievability, this retrievability is based on essentially holding the client accountable if they say that the data is retrievable. So we very much, the governance team very much has the right and the ability to enforce retrievability. I think for everyone, if you are a client, if you're a storage provider and you would like to manage the SLAs about retrievability with your client, we would request to either apply, make sure that you are kind of being honest about that in the LDN, or you just apply for eFil Plus or another pathway that works for you. But for open public data sets, as well as commercial public data sets, retrievability is a core part of what Filecoin, the value that Filecoin provides. And this effort will continue. And there might be consequences in the future for low retrievability. Right now, I think this is the other question that we're getting, that what is a good level of retrievability? Anything above 1% is good for now. The goal here is to encourage more and more SPs, and especially SPs through clients, to actually hold them accountable. We understand that this is a new bot, and of course we do not want to disrupt the flow, the business flow of the different stakeholders. But it is very important to know that retrievability is a very important part of the value provided by Filecoin. And so, yeah, if you disagree, if you have questions, you're more than welcome to raise an issue, and we can have a conducive discussion. So that's all I had to say on that. I unfortunately do not. Oh, once again, I'm not sure what the screenshot is about, but we can continue. Due diligence. So I think this was coming out of discussion. I think there's been consistent requests from different stakeholders. Over the last 2 years since the program has developed, we've given a lot of power to notaries, especially when it comes to due diligence. Unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of abuse of that power. And so as a result of that, we are taking things in our hands. Of course, we are big proponents of decentralized consensus, and we would like to do that in that way. So this issue is essentially crowdsourcing what should be good due diligence. I think everyone who cares about Filecoin Plus should participate here. I just posted another issue this morning, which is specifically about from the perspective of trust and transparency. But this issue is different from the issue I posted. This issue essentially is a discussion about what should be kind of the minimum requirements and the guidelines that a notary should follow, which would become part of the SLA requirements for V5, the next round of notary elections. Whereas the issue that I posted today that I'll be discussing next discusses what can the TNT working group do to take action. So yeah, I think we can move to the next issue at this point. So again, this was posted this morning. This essentially outlines some of the minimum requirements that different stakeholders should have. In my opinion, again, it's a proposal for different types of data sets. I think we have some new forms come in, as well as some new approaches like KYC that have been launched in the past month or two. So we want to leverage all of that. So please engage with this issue. And I just want to, I think, lastly, respond to the discussion that has been going on in the Phil Plus channel. I think I've mentioned this before in the TNT working group calls, but we are very aware that people are selling data cap and what's happening in secondary and tertiary markets. I think I think the approach that a lot of people take is, well, you can't do anything about it. And I think that's very much going to change. I think, of course, I have limited power, but of course, I think what we can do is totally make things public. And that's where I think the latest tool that has been launched that does part of the work, where we just revamped the starboard dashboard, and in the coming weeks I'll be launching training, and this will become a mandatory requirement to be a notary in the program, where you need to know how to use this tool to do due diligence. So yeah, I just want to flag here that if anyone feels that the Phil Plus team isn't doing enough to prevent abuse, that's totally fine, and I would encourage you to please reach out to me. The fact that certain community members are more active, of course, that is a strong sign for trust. How else will one earn trust? One earns trust by, in an open ecosystem, by building tools, showing proof, and if someone is doing that work and saying that I'm just trusting them, of course I'm trusting them because they're doing the work. So I think I will continue to do so. And if you have a strong argument, please provide evidence, or please provide, counter tools. Just, words are very cheap. So I just want to kind of, nail that down. But yeah, I think that's all I had to say today. I can take this issue as well. I think this issue, again, is by a community member. There was a lot of hot discussion regarding this. So essentially, I'm very well aware that Filecoin Plus and governance team doesn't have a lot of say on storage providers. I think we all have different opinions on it. So there is, but I just want to flag that anyone in the community is welcome to ask questions about any stakeholder. That includes SPs. And of course, an SP can choose to ignore, but that of course has consequences, right? So essentially, if there is an issue that requests information about SPs, we will always approach it from the client's lens, because we understand that Filecoin Plus in the FIP 003 does not have much power over SPs. But that is not to say that, there are other ways in which we can address, because we understand that, many SPs apply on behalf of their clients or are pretending to be clients. So yeah, all of this is not like new knowledge for us, but we also understand the constraints. So again, I think if you're just going to, if you're a community member who disagrees, I would highly encourage you to open a dispute in the TNT dispute tracker or have a conducive discussion. I think finger pointing or violating the code of conduct is probably not the best way to move forward. So yeah, I just wanted to flag that as well.
Thanks, RG. I appreciate you that. There was a chat question that just came in from Cloud X. So you might have missed it when we addressed it earlier. Right now, the subtitles are only closed caption for English. We're still working for a translation that goes live. So you'll be able to see Chinese simplified. Probably on the next call, we'll have everything worked out for you. So just to let you know. Great. We had quite a few issues come through on proposals. Want to make sure that those were on the radar for everybody and then give a chance for open discussion. So the first one was the proposal on the open data set flow. I was wondering, KZ, if you're on the line, I know that you know this a lot more along with RG. Would you feel comfortable as well with this?
Sure thing, K-Ray. Thank you. Yes, this is a modification that was submitted last week on behalf of the Filecoin governance team, looking to address the issue of not enough information related to public open data sets. Now, as most people know, historically and currently, the majority of applications coming through Fil Plus are for the category of public open data, which could be a data set from AWS, Common Crawl. There's a lot of examples out there that are data sets that are not technically owned by the applicant, but they're looking to onboard the data, prepare and onboard the data using SPs within the Fil Plus program. There are clear guidelines that need to be met when you're using this pathway towards onboarding data, and that involves clear distribution and working with different SP entities. And part of what's described in this issue is, again, a reminder that Fil Plus is a subsidy that's meant to help enable SP entities grow around the world. So the idea you need to follow the guidelines to be able to support more and more SPs and enable better network growth, right? So over the past few months, we've seen a lot of comments and issues coming through the different community channels related to clients not following guidelines and notaries signing off without doing proper due diligence. So this issue essentially looks to nip both of those in the butt upfront by requiring applicants to submit more information about not only themselves from a viewpoint of checking, who they are, confirming if they're a data preparer, but also the SP entities that they're working with. This is becoming very clear that it needs to be mapped and looked at throughout the process. So once you identify who you plan to work with, the idea then becomes, do your actions match what you said in your plan? And we have tools now to check that. And if they do not match, it's the notary's job to clearly do due diligence on this. And if something needs to change, that's fine. But there's no further allocations until such time. And then again, the idea is like after 2 allocations, if again they're just playing this game of saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, it doesn't match right now. We're looking to find other SPs or something like that," then the application won't move forward until there's clearly defined connection between the plan that meets the guidelines and the actions. So far, I think this proposal has seen a lot of positive support in the comments. I'd appreciate anyone else to go in and provide feedback or support. We plan to move forward on this immediately once we get enough support here to implement for new proposals moving forward. New applications, that is. So yeah, I'll stop there if there's any questions or comments.
Outstanding. Thanks, KZ. KZ, if we had to ask from like a community, how long do you think this proposal will be active before it's fully implemented and pushed into guidelines?
Yeah, I think historically, being able to submit a proposal, review it on a call like this, so that we have awareness in the community, and then opportunity for people to express support or feedback, generally within a 1 to 2 week time frame. So I would hope by the end of this week we can review what's out there, and then by the end of next week have this out and running. That's my goal.
Outstanding. Well said. This was a community flag, and I think this comes from a lot of the SLA, and we touched on this earlier, but I wanted to make sure that this one proposal was on all notaries' radar, as well as like collecting feedbacks and input. So we kind of mentioned that we went from, I think it was a handful, like less than 13 in round one of elections. We went up to around 20 notaries in the second. And then the third round, we had around 40 or so active notaries. In the fourth round, that number jumped up. I think we had currently accepted 100, and then a few had dropped off due to like disclosure requirements or clearly like not able to meet the requirements. And we were left with 86 notaries on the multi-sig that had signing permissions. And I think when we started to look at this, and we've talked about it on these calls, is of those 86, we're only seeing significant signing activity from a very small percentage. And so this was a community flag, but I think this kind of hits on it. It's how do we look at that removal process of the V4 notaries? So when we get set for a V5 election, we have a very core group and we have a very well-established set of like, what does it take to perform in this program to be a steward of the data that's coming onto this network? So a very good proposal. I think one of the things that we're looking at, and we've touched several times on this call that kind of feed back into this, it's what are the standards that we're looking for? So RG just spoke briefly about like, what is the retrievability standard that should be coming forward? And are notaries aware of that? KZ just spoke about like, how does that proposal look as far as tie-ins? And we had talks about like, how often should that diligence be conducted? As we kind of push this out and as we start to look, there are some very low-hanging notaries that can be removed, those that aren't on the calls, those that might not have conducted diligence. And the second is looking at the pool of notaries that might have had past abuse claims, how those claims have been addressed. Are they like rectifying that behavior? Or are we still seeing something? So this proposal really ties into a lot of how we're focusing on the quality phase of it. So a very well-written proposal. I'd encourage everyone to go look. I'd also encourage you to leave any comments. If there's nothing new that you had to the discussion, simply giving a thumbs up or a thumbs down on an existing thread is wildly helpful for having a record of transparent data. That way, as we move forward on this notary removal, there should be no question for a notary, like, why am I being removed? What did I not do that was needed? We're trying to make this as clear and transparent as possible. And I'll be following up on what that looks like for any notaries in the program. That way there's no confusion on if you're meeting expectations or missing it, because they're all clearly lined out. So I highly encourage you to go look at this issue, number 920. Leave any thoughts or feedback for us on that. I'll pause here because this directly impacts notaries. If anybody on the call has any thoughts, comments, or wants to add to this. All right. One of the things that's come out of the Trust and Transparency Working Group that's been really effective is a few months ago, if a member of the community, a notary, a member of the governance team noticed things that were flagged as abusive, there really was no mechanism to collect that input and then have some place where it can be implemented and documented. So RG rolled out the dispute resolution tracker as well as GitHub proposals. So I wanted to flag this for all notaries that are on the call or anybody watching, because this is the opportunity to kind of address this. So if you see something on the network, or if you see behavior, putting it in the dispute resolution tracker or making a proposal like these new ones that have been stood up is a very clear way to establish this. One thing that's nice, coming back to comms, is if we take this out of Slack, it has a retrievability. So this GitHub issue will be open as long as the program is. So we can come back to this not just 2 weeks, but 2 months or 2 years later and tie this and connect it and have a pathway. The second is that it gives more rails to like, how are we looking at this and how are we discussing it? So I know RG spends time on the trust and transparency working groups to kind of go over this, but I also wanted to make sure that all notaries on the call were taking to come into the issues in GitHub and looking at some of these flags, leaving any comments. Some of these comments will have like 1 or 2. Some are much more lively discussions like 7.4 and 9.8.9 that you could see here. I'm going to pause. CloudX, I see you have a hand up. The floor is yours. CloudX Lab, I see your hand. If that was on purpose, the floor is yours for anything you'd like to share. Maybe an accidental keystroke. I'm going to manually lower your hand, but if you want to come back by any means, just stick that hand up and we'll give it back to you. So everyone else, highly encourage you. Great use, great flags. And again, this is what trust and transparency is looking at. I see a new hand coming from Peter. Peter, the floor is yours.
Hey guys, this is Peter from Top Blocks. Yeah, we would like to discuss with the community about the Notary Governance issue number line 13. Actually, it's the one on the very bottom of your screen. Yeah, we did prepare a very small slides. We would like to.
I think, Peter, I'm so sorry. I think we will discuss that specific proposal in the TNT working group call. Then if you could just post your slide deck in the issue, that'll be super useful. I just feel that, right now we don't have the proper decision-making body, so it won't be super useful. But I really appreciate that you made a slide deck. But yeah, please post that in the issue. And then if you don't mind, if you can also post it in the TNT working group, because I know it was a working group channel, because I know the call was canceled today. So I think I would really appreciate it, but thank you so much.
Can we have a few words here? Because I did look at the whole GitHub 913 discussion. I think it's kind of more like a one voice. We don't think it's more civilized. It's basically, I think, Kate might be, driving the talk, but actually you can see he's just labeling everybody to top blocks. Even there's one guy, Guan Xinliang, I don't even know him. He thinks he's top blocks. And he's not even listening to anybody, actually. It's really uncivil, I feel like.
Okay, yeah, I'll take a look right away after this call and I'll jump in.
We've been a long time, SP starting from Space Race. We are based in California. PL team did visit our data center in Santa Clara in 2022. I think Chin Wharton, did visit our colo. We are huge, actually. She was impressed during her visit. So we are doing everything in California, in Silicon Valley. Everything is very, very expensive. We are still with you guys, with Filecoin. We did invest. We did not even sell one single field from our Space Race, mining from day one of this project. Now we feel we are bullied here, actually. So yeah, I do say, the 0.01 field and the 0.1 field is used to put multiple, miners together, whatever, say they are belonging to the same company. Yeah, there's only 0.1 was pointed in the GitHub discussion, right? Or 0.01, even using those transactions to label people together. And about the VPN, it's solely for protection. The VPN actually is used, it's not VPN, actually, we are using proxy, okay, again. So we are using, because we were DDoSed during the space race, we have to have some protection here. That's why we are using, as you can see, all those IP addresses still belong to the same city. If we would like to do any abusive activity, we should be hiding to some different city, right? It's still the same city, just from California to New Jersey, right? So what's the point for gaining from this kind of proxy or VPN activity, right? So I don't see any point. I'm a networking engineer for 20 plus years. So basically using any basic networking knowledge here is not going to drive to that kind of conclusion. Say, okay, proxy or VPN here is kind of abusive. And the 0.01 field transfer and 0.1 transfer and 2 field transfer.
My friend, you are being pretty loud to the community. Let me quickly say, using VPNs is not illegal ever. The problem is
we're not using VPN. We are not using VPN.
Buddy, I was still talking. The problem here is self-dealing. And I'd love to chat with you, but
we can have an offline discussion here. Yeah,
can you please wait a few seconds without screaming? We'd love to talk with you during the Trust and Transparency Working Group, but not right now.
Sure. Let's be civil. Okay. Yeah, I'll be in Vegas next week. Okay, in the ESPA. I wish I will see many more SPs, even maybe people from PL team, so we can discuss in person, face to face. Yeah. So it's gonna be okay. It's not really, I'm not saying any reasoning there, we're all engineers, right?
Yeah, I'll be there as well, Peter. So let's touch base. I totally understand.
Sure. Yeah, I'll be glad to see you, to talk with you in person. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay. Thank you so much.
I appreciate this, guys. Good feedback. And for those of you on the call, what's really helpful about the structure of this is this call meant to be like high-level governance, making sure that all issues are up, and then great flags coming from you, Peter, great flags from Hidi, great flags on this. And that's what's really nice about the other calls that we have, which is specifically dedicated to the Trust and Transparency Working Group working this out. So great flags. We posted that link right there for 913. This will be a great opportunity for you, Peter, to come to that call as well as address it. That way we can get to the bottom and work out to make sure that everything is running effectively. So I appreciate you adding that comment. Thank you. So kind of wrapping up, we just kind of did some community discussion. I want to make sure that we've saved time at the end of the call, which we have, for anything else that might be on your radar. I can tell that, like, based off some of the DMs that I've gotten, it was about the election and a lot of like what goes into the inactive notary removal, as well as like, how are we looking at this communication? So anything that's on your mind, I'll mute. Floor is yours.
Oh, hi, just a quick question. So regarding to the TNT call, when will be that? Because like on my phone, it's the old one, which happened right now.
Yeah, great question. So TNT has their own dedicated Slack channel, and inside of Slack, they post that. And they also have a couple of links. I will multitask while I mute again, and I'll dig that out and I'll drop those links in chat so you have it. RG, if you're on the call, would you mind just commenting a little bit about when the next call is and what's the best place to get in touch?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, I'll just drop the Filecoin, the Slack link here. The next call, it was supposed to be today because we had to reschedule it. So given everything I'm hearing right now, I'll propose to hold the call next week on Tuesday. I will be at ESPA, so just give me maybe like to like just to look at my schedule. But yeah, we'll hold the call. But if you do have anything urgent, you can either DM me or you can also post in the Trust Working Group channel. Yeah, I think that's where we can do. If you have a specific dispute, there's also the TNT dispute tracker. I'll post a link to that as well, where there's a Google form at the top of the of this tracker where you can input a dispute. But if you have a specific question about trust and transparency, you can definitely DM me.
Yeah, nice. That's a good flag too. The Trust and Transparency meets 8:30 every other week, 8:30 Pacific time, every other week from the governance calls. So because of the holiday that happened in the States, I think that schedule is a little bit overlapping. So RG will be in Vespo next week, ESPA, and then we'll be reestablishing that. So apologies if you were looking for that. I think that we stepped on that on the governance side. So good flag. I appreciate you raising that. I posted the link to Airtable one last time for those 3 or 4 of you that joined the call since then. One last opportunity. If there's anything on the minds, open forum for anything else that you'd like to discuss.
Hey, hello. Hey, hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you. Go ahead.
Okay. Thanks, guys. I'm from Biotech, and thanks for your dedication in this project. But I got some problem. That's I'd like to address that. The matter of the signature problem with LDN. Sorry for but I will say that because at level 5 notaries, we follow the rules strictly and perform all necessary reviews. But we are not on-chain detectives, and it's impossible for us to check every on-chain activities, And but so we noticed that their proposal should be 913. Sorry, I will post it on the chaining board later. And the proposal to remove it should be 913. The proposal to remove the notary who signed. We can't understand the rules of such a proposal because we are in accordance with the working produce for the 1971 application. We add the first round of signers, and we don't know the next sitting of the others. Besides, for another 2045 issue, the applicant permits that they would not store more than 30% of data to Node, and the report shows that they did it. But for this, it's simply no problem issue past the setting sign. But why we are still convicted of breaking the rules, and there's no enough evidence to show that. So I just want to know who signs the criteria, and we want this project to be great, and hopefully it's fair. Thanks.
Yeah. So let me just say something on this, right? I think that's a good question that you ended with, right? Who decides? Right now, based on discussions, I am the one who's, essentially looking at like the quality of discussion and, the pros and cons. But I understand that that is a very, that might not be the best approach to take. So what I'm going to do, right now, the Filecoin team is currently meeting in person to discuss some of these exact issues. And so there's actually an issue on Notary Governance. I'm just trying to pull it up, where we try to form a set of a council or a committee who are like the self-selected set of members who will be essentially the subset of the Trust and Transparency working group. I think the challenge there was that FEM was very new, and so some of the technicalities that we had in terms of staking weren't clear. But that is not to say that we will not revisit that idea. So in the next week or two, hopefully a week, you'll see an issue come up where we will essentially open up the floor to form a form of decision-making committee or group, which will have representation from various different geographies, stakeholders. I think I just need more time to think about and propose what the election process would look like, because as you can imagine, this can be pretty contentious, but that's where we're leading to. So to answer your last question, that's how, the decisions will be made. In terms of, again, I think I just want to kind of say this again. I know it's very, very hard for anyone when they're accused in public. Right. I think if someone was to accuse me of, fraud in public, of course, it takes a reputation hit, and I totally understand that. But I think I just want to say, like, right now that, given that we're using GitHub, anyone can come in and open an issue. So if you disagree, I think my best recommendation until we form this committee would be to, just maintain your stance. And if you think you are doing the right thing, you don't need to worry about it. As you can see, I'm very conscious before posting an opinion from my own side. And so, I just want to reassure that, if there is an issue against a client or an SP that you're working with, please participate in the discussion. And we are, as the governance team, taking steps to come up with a better decision-making process. I think it's high time that, like things like staking are introduced. They keep getting pushed because of other priorities that keep coming in, but it is on our roadmap. We will prioritize it and, kind of present something more concrete in the coming weeks to the community. So, I hear you and I appreciate you flagging this right now.
All right, we leave the commit below the GitHub, and I hope you guys can double check that. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff.
Good flag. Hitty, I see your hand. Floor is yours.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to say to everybody who is inside this channel who has been falsely accused, the only way to dispute things that are disputed is to attack facts with facts. As long as you can prove, and not just words like I am this or I am that, if you can prove things, then the discussion is a no-go. And we can just say, oh, wait, and we can resolve it. But words have no impact if they are not behind some evidence. So show the evidence, come clean, and just tell what happened. If you can't do that, it's really difficult to have an argument. That's the only thing. Just we need proof to have a civil discussion, not just words.
Yeah, and Hattie is Peter again from Top Blocks. Yeah, I think I really respect, RG or even hate for all your efforts, but it's not only you have the logic, okay? Everybody got that logic. So I believe, RG or Kevin, you might be the moderator of the group. So when there is obvious one-side voice, something obvious, you got to kick in. So, hey, it's not only you have logic, okay? We are engineers also. We have logic.
I'm talking about logic, Peter. I'm talking about proof. That's not the same thing.
Yeah, that's right. Just like what VPN you are talking about, right? So I'm a network engineer for 20 plus years. I know what network VPN is, what proxy is. For the VPN issue, you just pointed out. You're still using the same geolocation. Where I'm going to profit from that? Think about it that way. Where's your logic? So it's obvious, but you're still insisting, just does not listen to anybody. That's not just right, okay? And using like very minimal transaction, like 0.1, 0.01 gas fee kind of thing. bundle people together. Actually, we did transfer, field to people like ST Field, Glyph, those guys. You could bundle everybody together using that logic, okay? That's not right, right? So using some basic logic, you would not draw that conclusion, okay? Just bundle everybody together. I see, I kind of pity when I look at the message from another guy. What's his name? His name is like Guan Xin. Yeah, he might be Chinese actually, I don't even know this guy. You label him as top blocks. And whatever he say, you thought he's from top blocks. Oh, what a pity. I was just laughing my jaw off. So just don't.
Peter, I'm sorry. I think that I accidentally cut you off while I was talking. So Peter, if you're muted, that was my fault. But great points. And I love how you're looking at this from like, what is the engineering reason? And then what is the use case in the program? And then how does it align? I think that is such a well-structured approach to take. And I think that's what Hitty was trying to say too, is like, love it, love the input. Let's kind of take that technical justification and then bring that to the trust and transparency and working it out. And if I'm hearing you correctly, that's what you're saying too. So thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
I'm going to pause. We have like 10 seconds left. I'd like to thank those of you that were on this call. The Filecoin and governance team is meeting for a colo right now. So a lot of these issues that are flagged, we're going to be discussing and coming back. Those of you on the call, thank you so much for taking the time. The next call will be happening at the next schedule. You'll check it in Slack. Appreciate all of you. Have a great day. Thank you again. Well, good evening, good morning. Welcome to the second Notary Governance call of July 11th. Let's take a look at the agenda here. So we're going to cover the same points we hit in the morning, and the main emphasis that we were driving home on that call as well as this one is what notary communications, activity, and participation looks like. And how is that driving this quality phase that we're working towards? And what are we looking for you as notaries, as well as how you should be communicating with the community at large? The update coming from Trust and Transparency is related to a couple new features, a couple of mining tools that will be of interest to you notaries to look at this. And under proposals, we have two new updates that you might have seen in GitHub. If not, that's why we're putting them on this call, as well as highlighting a couple of threads from the Trust and Transparency abuse reviews. If it's like the morning, we'll have around 10-15 minutes at the end of the call. So if there's anything that you want to dive into, we'll have plenty of cycles to jump into that at the end. Quick reminder, we did not meet on July 4th. Today is the 11th, and the next call will take place on the 25th of July. If you have anything you want to add to the next agenda, as always, there's going to be a repo. Just make a comment. Kevin, I'd love to talk about fill in the blank, and I'll put that on the agenda. If you don't want it public and you just want to flag it, feel free to DM me on Slack, and I'll do the exact same thing. You have a team of governance here to back you up. No change to this. So if you're a frequent caller, you know who our names are. If you're new to watching this, if you need any questions, feel free to route through me, and I'll get to the best placed on the team to get that going. So with that, notaries. First off is we had this question come up in Slack, and it was a great ping. It was, hey, we had been talking about the election coming up this summer. Is there any news on dates? So here's what's going on right now with the election for full transparency. We are delaying the V5 elections for the following reasons. One is we're working on improving like the accountability and resources to existing notaries. For those of you that have been around a while, you've seen the notary pool go from around 20 in the V2 2 years ago up to around 50 on V3 last year. And this year we jumped to around 86 new notaries, and a lot of growing pains with the program that's scaling that quickly. And so what we're finding is that having more notaries isn't always advantageous for fast signing and diligent signing. So we're really looking at if an election is just designed to bring more people on, that's probably not the most helpful thing. We have lots of quality people, but how are we enabling those notaries to sign and review and do that diligence? So that's where our effort is going. So if there is someone on the call that's keen to get involved in the program, become a notary, please message me. I'll put you on a list, make sure that your application is on file when we do it. But this is kind of the thought process. So no election time frame once we have tooling in place we'll move forward with this. But good question. Just want to make sure that we're transparent and sharing. A flag on communication. So we've talked about this on the last call. Just a friendly reminder that as we're communicating on Slack, we're mindful, we're not abusive. And if there is any flags, we take that comm over to the GitHub proposal for trust and transparency, where it's really easy to action and go forward on that. All right, notaries on the call. I am putting in chat the link that has the SLA Airtable for you guys. Thank you for filling this out. The first part of 2023, we kind of took this approach that like, hey, if you said you were on the call but didn't sign this, that's okay. I updated the roster. Going forward with 2023, it's going to be much more of a hard requirement. And the reason for it, it's not just like signing a list, like, hey, I'm here. But when you fill these out, you kind of allocate your self-reported hours. Where are you as a notary investing your time? And this matters because we're trying to solve that so that you don't have to invest as much time on things other than the applications and the community and what you care about. So thank you for filling this out. We appreciate it. And that's why it's going to be used for the SLA going forward. Your self-reported hours are so valuable for the metrics. So a check-in on that. For the last maybe month and a half, what we've been doing is looking at notary participation. And so this is kind of the timeline that we've set. And you'll see that the 2 dates have shifted. And essentially what we've done is we've collected all of the participation from what the notaries have been doing and then just put them out. So like, hey, here's for everybody to see how many applications are signed, what's going on. And this is issue 904. It's meant to be a discussion, just make sure we have the data correct. And now what we're going to be looking at is how does the participation that we've seen happen organically tie back to like what the program needs. So at the end of the day, there's 400 some LDN applications over the course of 86 notaries. What's a realistic expectation to like look at those applications, suss them out to see if they're quality and then they should receive data cap or not? So that's really the heart of this and what we're looking at. So if there are notaries that aren't able to meet this objective, like either they've changed companies or this really wasn't a good fit for them, or they don't have the time to really invest in this going forward, there needs to be some kind of mechanism to like offboard notaries and then just warmly welcome them back should bandwidth increase in the future. So there was this issue 911. If you haven't seen it in GitHub, this is your call to kind of look at it, community sponsored. And what we're looking at to kind of look at this and why I'm bringing this up for you notaries on the call is I like your feedback. It's that what is the time period that's realistic to ask for reviewing applications? Is it that a notary should do this once a week? Once a month? Every 2 weeks? So if you have feedback as a notary, do you like to sign and review applications every week? Every month? Let me know, because what I would hate to do is pick some arbitrary timeline that says, notaries, we want you signing every week, which is totally unrealistic if you sign in batches every couple of weeks when bandwidth allows. So please put it in chat. Please leave a comment in 911, or I'll pause. If a notary on the call has thoughts on this, what does a timeline of your work look like? I'd really like to hear. So in the chat, Fat Man, thank you for asking that. So monthly, I kind of agree. That's what I thought would be like a realistic timeline. That way, in case you go on vacation, in case there's a holiday, in case something picks up at work, there's not like this looming crisis. I appreciate you leaving that, Fat Man. I'll put that in the comments. If anybody else has feedback, agree, disagree, I'd love to hear it. Thank you. All right, if you are looking at this is just a refresh. Check out that Fil Plus application review. We send lots of applications there that are looking for notaries. It's very public. Those guys will write back. Thank you, notaries, for that are responding to it. And then if you are wondering like what goes into the monthly, it's not just pure applications signed. Like it's not like a goal where we look at a notary and say, you've signed 30 applications, bravo. Obviously, if you get 30 applications in your review and all 30 of them are very clearly fraudulent, then it does nothing to sign. In fact, it does the opposite. So if you remember that tooling that's now in the registry, you can review 30 applications if you were to do it, or 10, or whatever your bandwidth is that you've signed up for. But if you mark it in this diligence in the registry, it makes it public for everybody and goes a long way. So it's not just signing, but just reviewing and leaving your notes. Greatly appreciated. And in the chat, just to circle back on the timeline, I see four comments for monthly. I think that's the strong leader. So thanks for the feedback. Unless something comes up in chat, I think we're trending that direction on the monthly. All right, working group updates. I'm going to quickly check and see if RG is on the call. If not, you're going to have my my tiptoe explanation through his talking points. Some of those guys are at an offsite right now that I wasn't able to join. So let's take a look. First one, if you check out the storage providers on Quality Data Cap site, there's a new column. Really kind of stoked off this one. Caro posted it in Phil Plus today. And essentially what it shows is the retrievable bot score for all of the allocation that goes off. So if you look at it right now, I think it's still beta. They're kind of kicking it. If you have feedback, please send it over to Caro. But I think one of the goals that we're looking at is, what is a good retrievability score? So as you look at this, is it 0 or is it 100? And it's very clearly not 0. RG had mentioned anything greater than 1% is what we're looking for, is like setting the baseline and then obviously ratcheting it up from there. So tooling is live. You can check it out. Hopefully this is as helpful for you as it goes forward. The second thing that RG was flagging is that in the trust and transparency, they have essentially like a due diligence process that's going on, and that there was a couple of questions that were outstanding for them. And so we shared this slide that they're in the discussion phase for trust and transparency. And if you sit on that trust and transparency working group, they typically meet every other Tuesday, which, because this call shifted 1 week, was today. So there was a lot of questions on the call this morning from a couple of like the applications that were flagged. Just wanted to let you know that RG will be rescheduling this to go off next week, and he'll be at ESPA in Vegas to do so. They just launched this requirements pathways, a very well-written presentation on it that was led by KZ and RG. Essentially what they're looking at is like, how does the data come on board? And essentially what are the requirements of that data as it goes? I realize that I'm not going to be nearly as deep dive into this as RG did this morning. So if you're curious about this, if this relates to you, check out RG on the morning call on the YouTube, or just read this 925. Very summarized, right to the point, and it just highlights what they're doing. This question came up on chat. We included it on the Sync for Trust and Transparency, and it was essentially like, hey, if I want to check a miner's retrievability, is that something that we can do on the tooling? Essentially, RG answered this issue in Unreachable Miners 906, essentially saying that's not something that we can do on the tooling, but it's something that you can go after yourselves. So with that, I'm going to pause, and now we're jumping back into the issues that I can speak to in much more detail for you. And the first one is the open data set flow, relatively new. I think this one got written yesterday by the governance side. And what this is really talking about is, how are we going to govern this process and make sure that it's being adhered to properly? So as some of you that have been around this program for a while now, you realize a lot of the tooling was built to handle like a certain set of volume, and a lot of the documentation was built for like a rapid onboarding. But then what we're seeing now is that some diligence is not being done, and a lot of the questions come back and it's like, well, hey, how does this work between the client, the SP, and what's like the role of the notary as we're doing it? So these are very clear steps, and it really walks through what is the allocation strategy from start to finish, how should it be adhered to, and how will that process be governed? So this is probably one of those proposals that if you were going to take time to read just one, I would say 925 is a great use of your time. So 925 kind of walks through all that. I'm just going to link it here in chat because I know if you're like me, multitasking can sometimes get the better of you. So I'm going to multitask over to my second page, grab that GitHub link, and I'm putting it here in chat. Check this one out. I think this would be worth your time. All right, another application that came through that you might want to be aware of came through talking about community and how we have notaries in the program. So it's been a theme for the past 2 months that quality is what we're really looking for in this Filecoin Plus phase of growth. And of that quality, not just in applications, but in the diligence process of those applications. And that's where you as notaries lead the charge. So this is saying, essentially, look, if we have a lot of notaries, does it make sense to keep a lot of notaries, or could this work be done with a very active, smaller user base? And this is worth teasing out, and this is worth having a discussion around, especially as we look at like the SLA and removing inactive notaries. So if you haven't seen this one, this was filed by community. And what they're trying to say is like, can we drive higher trust and engagement if we reduce the number of notaries? And then they really kind of call out like, what are the steps that a notary has to take? And are we meeting these steps? And that's very similar to something that we've been looking on the governance team. But our approach is really like, what can we do to help you the most? And if you tell us that, it really makes it more helpful for us to put that together and work on those guides and those trainings. Or, hey, what are we doing in the program that's not helping you? So again, 920, really worth a read to kind of look at it. And that leads us to how abuse is kind of flagged in the system. So what I have is a screenshot of maybe 4 or 5 open proposals that are in the GitHub repository for governance. And what these all just essentially like abusive behavior flags that were flagged from the community, looking at some things that didn't add up. What's really nice about this model, not nice that we're having this discussion about abuse, but the fact that it's out of Slack is what makes it really nice. So thank you for making these inside of GitHub, because we can kind of have the discussion. And this is exactly kind of the content that comes up on the trust and transparency call. So on Tuesday, I think some of the folks that were called out on this have really detailed explanations to explain this or to articulate it or to ask questions themselves. So you might have seen in Phil Plus chat, I think they've already posted a slide deck rebuttal to some of the issues in issue 9989. So it's really good to see this taking place. If you are one of these individuals that's on this is perfect to kind of write your reply in this comment. If you come to the Trust and Transparency Working Group that happens next Tuesday, they're going to dive deep, give you a forum to kind of discuss this, ask more questions, also ask RG's time for anything that I might not be clear. So good flags. If you have any questions, please check them out. And with that, I'm going to ask something of you, and it's knowing exactly what to talk about when we go forward. So obviously on this governance call, we take issues that were flagged from the chat, that were taken from GitHub, and we try to culminate them into just this one call. I'm going to post in chat right now the survey. This was created by Simon, and essentially what this is looking to do, it's capture a little bit more about how the program rules are perceived and thought of. So the screenshot that I have on right now, you can see it's one question. And the question is, what qualifies as abuse for data cap? And there's all these different answers. And then after you answer that, the follow-up is, how confident are you in your answer? And this tells us 2 things. One, it tells us like, hey, is this something that 10% of the people don't understand or 50% of the people don't understand? And then how confident are they? Maybe we have some documentation that's unclear, or maybe we could do a better job of communicating that. So thank you so much. If you're a notary, hint, hint, please fill this out. This is going to go a long way. And also I'll put this on the tracker as like, hey, I appreciate that time, because when we start building docs, this is exactly what we're hoping to gather from you and laser focus onto. So with that, that was everything in a nutshell as an update. A lot of information in the form of like looking for the next steps to come from you. And I think we're going to enjoy that together. So I'm going to mute my mic. And if there's anything on your mind, this is the time to flag it. So if there's anything you'd like to talk about, the floor is yours. Sometimes the calls just go quick. This will be one of them. If there's anything that comes up and you'd like to reflag, feel free to send me a DM. Otherwise, thanks for all your time tonight. Looking forward to seeing you guys around. Cheers and warmly. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.